So now it's time to hear from Adrienne Skinner, who in 2005 took a genetic test that showed that she was at risk for developing certain forms of cancer, which she eventually did develop. That same gene testing, though, also revealed that she was eligible for a clinical trial here at Johns Hopkins that helped save her life. So I met Adrienne a little over a year ago at the New York City Immunotherapy Patient Summit, where I got to hear some of her story. And even though success stories like hers are becoming more and more common, it still never tires me. I never tire of seeing how science is helping to save lives. So let's let Adrienne tell her that in her own words by way of this video. And then, Adrienne, why don't you come on up and we'll hear directly from you. Thank you.
Having a genetic mutation, it's not if, it's when. You just get so caught up in this, and you don't want it to be your whole life. You want to have life in other ways. I have a very full life. I have a full-time job, I have 4 daughters, I have a new grandson, I play tennis, I do yoga, I have Joe in my life, we do lots of fun things. Joe and I met 2 months before I was diagnosed. He lost his wife of 26 years to cancer. He's a remarkable man. I'm very lucky to meet somebody like-minded who enjoys so much of the same things that I do. I have something called Lynch syndrome, which is a family genetic mutation. Lynch syndrome is 80 to 90% lifetime risk of digestive tract cancers. I had been losing weight, I was jaundiced. When I went in for the annual colonoscopy, I got a call within 2 hours saying something's wrong. It was a pretty fast diagnosis that turned serious extremely quick. On February 26, 2013, I went into surgery, came to several hours later, and he said we couldn't do it because it spread. You have spots on your liver. It's ampullary cancer, stage 4. We went through 3 different kinds of chemo. I've never been sicker in my life. It was horrible. I did it for a year. Because my cancer was MSI high, I was eligible for a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins. I get a call saying, if you can get down here tomorrow, we'll treat you. In the clinical trial, I received pembrolizumab. I would go down every 2 weeks. I would take the train. I would go up, I would get the infusion. I would get back on the train. Immunotherapy is really about enhancing your body's own ability to fight cancer. There was no side effects. I got all my hair back, no neuropathy. I felt great. I would have a biopsy 3 months following the first treatment. The surgeon who did it came over to me and said, if somebody hadn't told me you have ampullary cancer, I wouldn't have known. There's nothing there. It's gone. My last treatment was April 2016. And here I am, almost 3 years later, and I'm doing fine. I'm so glad I'm going to be around to watch my grandson grow up. I'm grateful that my daughters live close by. The Cancer Research Institute is the reason that cancer is being addressed with immunotherapy. And the research not only saved my life, but will potentially save members of my family. I'm alive. Life is great. I don't have anything that gets in the way of me living. I don't have to worry about this purely and simply because I got cured of this cancer in a way that did not compromise the rest of my body. Immunotherapy is absolutely the way of the future and present.
It still makes me teary. I was, and you've seen this story, but I'm going to go over a few of the items and then give a little bit more color to this. So I was diagnosed with this stage 4 ampullary cancer in February of 2013. And, you know, when the surgery to remove the tumor in my ampulla revealed that the cancer had spread to my liver, I was going in for the Whipple, the famous Whipple, if any of you have had to deal with this. And so I was prepared for this massive surgery of 7 hours. And so when I came to and they said, sorry, you got to go right into chemo, it's not going to be treatable through surgery. That was the first hit. So yes, I have Lynch syndrome. It's a familial genetic trait through my mother. I share it with one of my sisters. I also have 3 of my 4 daughters who have Lynch. So this is a big deal. And it's what caused the cancer. So I had years, I knew for 10 years almost that I had this. I had colonoscopies, endoscopies, I did all the things I was supposed to do to make sure that what was expected to be colon cancer were caught early, because that can generally be treated, right, if you catch it early. But actually, when they discovered the ampullary cancer, they figured out that it had actually been in the system for 2 years. So it was a long time, and they didn't get it. So it was pretty grim. And the chemotherapy that began after the surgery was, I had just been cut open for this massive, Whipple assignment, which didn't happen. And I get started on this chemo, and I've never been sicker in my life. It was awful. I mean, I couldn't even sip water. That's how bad it was. And it didn't work. I went through 3 different kinds of chemo over the course of the following year, and it would work for a little while, and then it stopped. And so, every time I'd go in and we'd go through this process, you just have to keep going. That's what I did. So my oncologist, Dr. Eileen O'Reilly at Memorial Sloan Kettering, had done the genetic test when they had gone in for the surgery, which they had hoped to do. They had taken the biopsy of the tumor, and she'd had it tested at my, I agreed. And so she had found that there was a genetic characteristic, MSI high, which in her studies also, she had found out there was a clinical trial occurring here at Johns Hopkins studying the effect of Keytruda, in this case, and how it was potentially effective for people like me who have MSI high induced cancers. And so she came to me, and I trusted her with everything. She was the person that was going to help me the most. I really had great faith. And she said, look, I have other chemo solutions we can try. What do you want to do? And I said, what do you think I should do? And she said, I think you should try and see if they'll let you in. Get into that clinical trial if you can, because I think that's your best option. So I was relatively healthy at that point, except for this terrible disease that was likely going to kill me. But I was still working full time. I played tennis, and I had wigs for work and wigs for tennis. And I was like, I didn't let it stop my life, but I was obviously dealing with a very serious situation. But I went in with an expectation that I would get admitted. The problem was that the chemo had been stopped for, I guess, about a month and a half, 2 months before I went in to see if they'd take me. And, the markers, they always look for certain parameters, like clinical trials. This is the deal. You want these people who have these characteristics, and my genetic markers were off the charts. I was, it was up and down, and I was not necessarily a good candidate in their eyes. So, but here's the thing. I've been in advertising sales for over 40 years. And there's a purpose in telling you this. It's been a wonderful career, especially because I transitioned from magazines to digital media 25 years ago. I kind of saw the light coming here. And so I've always been interested in new opportunities. And I had lots of friends in media sales over the years. And those that stayed in print who thought I was out of my mind were laid off long ago. So here I am, I'm still working, and the point I'm making is that this is something that allows me to understand how to put myself in the position of the person making the decision that's going to be really important. So it's, in terms of my livelihood, that's what I do, but I also understood it in terms of this clinical trial. When I went to meet, with them, my pitch was, I respected their guidelines. However, here I was strong and healthy, except for this admittedly terrible cancer that, would likely kill me. So most people come into clinical trials when nothing else has worked and they are literally at the end. And, treatments can leave you sicker in many ways than, even you were when you started. It's tough. Chemo does that to you a lot. So it's a hard fact that being weakened by chemotherapy is not perceived as positive for success in clinical trials. It's true. So being able to say I was willing to come now before I was in a weakened state from other treatments was a plus. In addition, I was calm and reasonable. And the truth is that the people who manage clinical trials and administer them are amazing, dedicated medical professionals who care deeply about the people in the clinical trials. They really do. I mean, this is a calling, in my view. They know that patient attitude is really important. And they look for that in participants. So I showed I was prepared to accept the risks and trust the process because it was the best option for me at hand. And it was based on the recommendation by the doctor I trusted above any other, Dr. O'Reilly. So initially, they turned me down. I was gracious in accepting this, but I never take no for an answer. That's my signature. But I also said I was willing to keep trying. I would keep trying and talking to them and seeing if they would reconsider. And they did. Holly Kimberling, who is a saint, head nurse on this trial, she advocated for me with Dr. Luis Diaz, who was the lead doctor, who was not in that day when I came to visit. And he asked her what she thought, and she said, I think we should give her a chance. And she called me the next day, and she said, if you can come back right away, we'll treat you. I was on that early train again. And I began treatment on April 15th, 2014. After suffering all the side effects, I had the hair loss, I had the neuropathy, I had the foggy brain, I had it all. It was tough. I had 0 side effects with Keytruda. I know none of these are going to work for everybody, but for me, it worked like a charm, and it worked without side effects. I was able to go every 2 weeks. I would take the 6 a.m. train out of Larchmont, where I live. I would go into the city. I would catch the Amtrak 717. I had it memorized. Down to Baltimore, made friends with all the people on the train, the conductors and the people in the cafe car. I still have them as friends, some of them. And I would get my treatment, and I would turn right around, and I would come back home on the 347 and come back home in one day. That was my life for 2 years. And I worked full time. I would take my computer, I would work on the train going down. By the time I was back on that train, coming home, I was a little exhausted, so I was pretty much sleeping in the sleep at that point. So it was a pleasure to be treated. I have to tell you, for me, the blood work to be in this clinical trial was harder than the infusions for the Keytruda that helped me. Really, it was amazing. So when I started the treatment, my cancer antigens were over 170. And within 2 months, they had dropped to 40. And by late July, 4 months later, when the biopsy they required as part of the trial was done, the surgeon said, once I awoke from the surgery, that there was no evidence of the tumor. It was literally gone, nothing. And it's amazing. I continued to go for treatments for the rest of the 2 years, which is what the clinical trial period is, because there was no reason not to, other than the travel. Of course, I'd made all these friends, so that was fun. But it was an insurance policy. I have Lynch syndrome. That's a given. And I have, Dr. O'Reilly and I talked about it, and she said, look, if you can do it, just keep going, because there's no reason not to. And you have a reason with Lynch syndrome to try to stay, involved with this drug as best you can. So I did. And, but I will tell you, I feel I was cured of this cancer by September 2014, as did Dr. Diaz, right? So I still go in for CT scans every 6 months. In fact, my next one is this Monday. And I'll do that for the rest of my life, which is okay with me. I know that I need to make sure that I stay on top of whatever's happening, and there are no guarantees, but I can live with that. I'm alive, that's key. And thank you. And the professionals at Johns Hopkins have become friends, and I look forward to seeing them every time I go down. So I am not the only one who had great results from Keytruda in this trial. Patients with melanoma and colon cancer, MSI high, were also given Keytruda with excellent results. That contributed to the approval by the FDA of Keytruda for use for MSI high patients. And it's the first time that a drug was approved for really non-specific for where the cancer is. It's for the genetic characteristics. So yours truly got an article in the New York Times with my picture. It was really kind of funny. But the point is that you know, we're living, as the doctors have said, we're living in an amazing time where things have happened and are continuing to happen so quickly. It's incredible. So in planning my talk today, I reacquainted myself with the history of immunotherapy. Dr. Coley and Dr. Old started a process that continues today in many different labs and with many different doctors and patients. I do marvel at my good fortune to be in the right place at the right time with the right people and to show that anything's possible. It really is. You think you know what's going to happen, but you really don't. You don't. And there was literally no hope for me when I was diagnosed, just a very determined doctor who searched to find a clinical trial that might help me. And needless to say, Drs. O'Reilly, Diaz, and Lee, Dr. Young Lee, who is the other lead doctor on the trial, are my heroes. So in summary, these past 6.5 years have taught me an important lesson. You think you know what will happen, but you really don't. Assumptions can be dangerous. Thankfully, we live in a time where the possibilities of treating cancer successfully have become greatly enhanced. More will come. I will continue to support the work of medical research, especially with the immunotherapy, as best I can. I hope you will too. Here are my guidelines, should you find yourself in a similar situation. So clinical trial success depends on specific characteristics. If you're looking at those, know what they are and know what yours are so you can match. It's important. Be educated. It's a journey, you know, explore all roads. You never know when there's going to be a road that opens up. It's true. Become educated, but trust and verify your sources. You know, the internet is not your friend sometimes. My friends made me swear not to be on it, and my business is being on the internet, so how about that? It was like, don't you dare go and look at that, because there's a lot of misinformation, so be careful. Remember, there are thousands of people who are working to help you. Your experience is important in ways you may never know. I know that there are people who I will never meet, never know, who have benefited as a result of what happened to me. That's great. Persistence and positivity does make a difference. And take control where you can. You know, I chose when I wanted to get my hair off. That was important to me. It was some measure of control, because with cancer, you feel like you're out of control. Everything's out of control. And, you know, I really had a wig for every occasion. I really did. I made a joke of everything, but it helped. So these are the amazing doctors. I just want them to get a call out here because they are incredible. Actually, Dr. Diaz is now at MSK, which is my hospital, obviously, with my oncologist, leading some additional research. And I'm really excited about that. I do a lot of fundraising with cancer research, rare cancer research through Cycle for Survival. These are all places and ways in which we can support this process. Another great picture of my fabulous kids, but they, you know, they know now that there's something that could help them, because chances are 3 of the 4 of them are going to be facing this at some point in their lives. Think of this, because of their Lynch syndrome, my 22-year-old daughter now has to have colonoscopies and endoscopies every year. That's how it works. Not that it'll necessarily catch it, as it didn't for me, but that's what we're up against. And Joe, well, here's a man who lived it already and actually chose to stay with a woman who he just met, who was then diagnosed with this terrible cancer. And I have to tell you, my friends, my own friends, went to him and said, we will take care of her. Nobody's going to fault you if you want to back away. Really? And he said, no, she's my friend. I'm staying. That's a keeper. And just because I got it wrapped with my grandson, because I'm that kind of grandma, he's got his first tooth coming in, and I'm so glad I'm here to see it. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Adrienne. I am just tearing up over here. That's, whew. Anyway, thanks for sharing your story with us. Also, just on a personal note, it was really nice to hear you mention Dr. Old, who was the founding scientific and medical director of the Cancer Research Institute for many years, who unfortunately died from prostate cancer a year before, or months before the first checkpoint blockade was approved. It's such a cruel irony, but it is such a wonderful legacy, I think. So that's also part of why I'm just a little choked up right now. So let's get some food, all right? So we're gonna have lunch.